All right, and welcome to Fast Break Breakfast, NBA podcast. My name is Keith, here alone for a solo interview episode. The full episode with John and Chuck will be out later in the week, probably Thursday. It's been Thursday. I feel like Thursday or Friday, we might actually have no more basketball to talk about for a little bit because all these first round series are kind of garbage now. None of these teams are rallying. I guess Spurs Nuggets is the only series that seems to be happening. I guess it's like a toss up. It's a coin flip. The Nuggets have outscored the Spurs in the second, third, and fourth quarters of the series so far, but get crushed every first quarter. And again, it was a Jamal Murray almost miracle fourth quarter and a Torrey Craig turning into Scottie Pippen with a jump shot style game in game 4 that made it a series. So that at least is exciting. Best of 3 now with the Nuggets having the home court advantage. But again, the Spurs look to be maybe the better team. I don't know. That is a real series. The rest, complete messes. The Utah Jazz lost to the Rockets down 3-0. Probably the most discouraging, disgusting loss I can remember that didn't involve like a big blown lead. James Harden couldn't hit any shots. I was on the edge of my seat, titillated with the negative shooting performance from James Harden. Missed his first 15 shots. I don't know if I'll see that again in my lifetime. I think it's been 20 years since a player missed their first 20 shots. He was so close to Tim Hardaway Sr., 0 for 17 worst shooting performance of all time. I don't know if we'll get anybody that close again. So that was very exciting. But to have James Harden finish the game 3 for 20, to miss his first 15 shots, and then the Jazz still lose at home, that series is over. I am very discouraged with the Jazz. I think the only series where a team might rally and it will take a supernatural intervention is the Nets Sixers, and it's only because Joel Embiid made a 3-1 Warriors blowing the lead joke at his post-game press conference. A joke so filled with negative karma that Jimmy Butler jumped up and ran away from him. So maybe by the ghost of Tracy McGrady's blown 3-1 series lead, the Nets can get some help there. But otherwise, these series are pretty much over. I'm just going to be watching some Deadwood, some Barry, and daydreaming about what these bad teams can do once they're eliminated. How do the Jazz fix this? How do the Thunder fix this? And today's episode is with Andrew Sharp from Sports Illustrated. We talk a little bit about those teams, but we also talk about our favorite teams, the Grizzlies, the Wizards, and just kind of banter about general basketball. So hopefully it's fun. Hopefully it's a breath of fresh air from a first round that's been good for a little bit, but then maybe these series aren't actually close. Maybe the Raptors are going to dominate the Magic. Maybe the Pistons should not have made the playoffs after all. I'm just kidding. It's good to make the playoffs. We can win. We can build on this. Get the momentum from, I don't know, something like that. It's better than tanking. Anyway, if you want to support our program, you can do that at patreon.com/fastbreakbreakfast. Get access to exclusive bonus content. Put up for our $5 and up crowd, had a Crepes of Wrath mini episode with Abby, my wife, talking about things in the NBA that she hates. Another way to support the program is to download and play the Draft app. Draft is a daily fantasy app that I use. It's all about the playoffs because your fantasy seasons are over. You still want to do a little fantasy. You can do it every day. It's not a salary cap league. I like it because you use a snake draft to pick your team. So it takes a little bit of skill to get the guys you want. Maybe you're like, you know what, Donovan Mitchell is going to score a lot of points on his home game. He's undervalued here. So you seek out the guys you want. I play for $1 every time. I've been winning money consistently in the playoffs. Maybe there's just more regular casual fans joining in. But it is in a very enjoyable way to play fantasy basketball. After you download the Draft app, it's really easy. I just play basketball. They have all sports, but I go into the basketball tab. I see these drafts. It's like 3 people needed. You join the table. You do the snake draft. You're not going to play against a bunch of pros trying to steal your money because they can't enter their same lineup over and over and over. You have to do a snake draft. And also, you can just play with your friends. I can only play with Fast Break Breakfast listeners if I want. So if you and your buddies want to do like a heads-up fantasy game just based on that night's games, you can do it. Draft.com. If you use our code FASTBREAK, you get a free $3 entry into any game. So it's a free $3 just to try the app out. It's completely legal. You can pay with PayPal to deposit money. If you want your money out immediately, they will PayPal you that day. There's no long wait. It's not like an offshore casino where it's a little harder to get your money in and out. I've been playing it every single day, almost the whole season, but I don't miss a playoff night with Draft because I like winning a little money. I like a little bit of the extra action on the games. I'm not ready to go full Uncle John and wager money on these crazy playoff lines. But if you just want to play some fantasy basketball for $1 or $2, draft.com/fastbreak. Use our code FASTBREAK, or just go to the iTunes or Android app stores. Search for it by the name Draft. And remember, use our code FASTBREAK to get an entry into a $3 game. All right, now let's talk to Andrew. My guest today is a senior writer for Sports Illustrated and is the host or co-host of the excellent Open Floor podcast, Andrew Sharp. Andrew, good morning.
What's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for coming on. We start our show talking about breakfast. I don't know you very well, Andrew, so I'm very excited how you're going to kick it off. Do you eat breakfast daily? Did you have breakfast today? Or can you at least regale me with something breakfast related?
It's interesting, actually. I eat breakfast almost never. I would say 95% of my days I don't eat breakfast.
Sure.
But I did today. In moments of weakness, every now and then I'll get like an everything bagel from Starbucks. And the Starbucks bagels are kind of gross. And yet sometimes I go that direction. And today was one of those days, actually. It's Monday morning. We're recording this. And I just needed a little extra something to get me going to start the week. So I got an everything bagel this morning.
I think that's a fine decision. I was getting excited for a second. You said you don't normally eat a breakfast, and then I thought you were going to follow up with because I was coming on Fast Break Breakfast, I decided to. But then you went the moment of weakness. I was like, oh, all right.
Yeah, well, no, we can call it that too. It's to honor you guys, you know?
I will say a lot of NBA writers, I don't know what the percentage is. I haven't done the numbers or gone back and counted. A lot of NBA writers, not big breakfast people. I guess it's there's the late games. I know you're Eastern time, and these things are getting over. Like, do you watch them do you stay up till they're over the West Coast? I mean, for me in Central time, it's like 12:30. I'm like, this is crazy.
Yeah, it's not great. I mean, I think at some point in my life, like I know Zach Lowe oftentimes wakes up early and rewatches these games.
Right.
I may have to make that switch at some point if I have kids, you know. But right now I'm in the like stay up until 1, 2, 2:30 range of playoff lifestyle, and it's not great. The one thing I will say on breakfast is I like breakfast a lot when I do eat it, and it's hard for me to continue to be productive after like a good, satisfying breakfast.
Yeah.
So I kind of need to sort of stay hungry throughout the day.
I got you. Oh, I like it. You need the carrot of I'm chasing this. I got to stay hungry.
Exactly. And then I have like 3 meals when a normal person would typically just have a regular dinner.
Oh, that's good. What is your this is something I asked some of the guests. I've listened to your podcast a good bit, but from listening to your voice, I was trying to guess what kind of basketball player you are. So sometimes I want to know, like, what's when you're playing pickup basketball, what's your basketball style, or is there like an NBA player who is kind of your clone for how you at least envision yourself playing?
So you put this in the little rundown email, and it really kind of stumped me because I'm not sure. I don't know. When I was in high school, I was more like DeJuan Wagner. Do you remember him at all?
Yeah. Oh, I certainly do. He had some kind of bladder infection that ended his career.
Well, yes. So my career also went sideways. But when I was like in high school, I would kind of put my head down and burrow to the rim. I was a high volume shooter, not necessarily very efficient. That was sort of my game. And so that was also DeJuan Wagner's game for a little while there. And now I think I'm more kind of just like going 3-point line to 3-point line and ostensibly a shooter, but like also can't really shoot. So I would compare myself to one of my favorite, kind of a cult hero of mine, I guess. I'm the only member of the cult, Rodney Hood. Yeah. So it's sort of like I have days when I can be good, but then there are a lot of days where I'm just a shooter who can't actually hit shots.
I feel like Rodney Hood, I was thinking about this the other day. He is the shooter whose misses, I think, look the worst. Like the ball does not come off the rim soft for him. Like he's clanging. I like that. So, go ahead.
He's also pretty good at getting himself open looks. Like he can kind of find these little holes in the defense and will find himself wide open a number of times in each game. And even then, you're like, well, this is still a very much 50-50 proposition because it's Rodney Hood.
I actually was thinking when you were describing yourself, I was hoping you were going to say PJ Hairston, who's a a guy his entire career described as a shooter, not a maker. Never ever hit threes.
Did he ever make it to the NBA?
Yeah. Oh, he was on the Hornets, and then he was traded to my Grizzlies, where he had a hilarious run. He also had the thing where, like, Kobe was doing the Mamba challenges. Oh, no, that was Ben McLemore. I was thinking of Ben McLemore tweeting at Kobe, what's my Mamba challenge? And Kobe never replied. No, but yes, PJ Hairston also was on the Memphis Grizzlies and was very awful.
Well, yeah, because I was a Carolina fan and remember PJ Hairston from Carolina, and then I think he was ineligible one year and had to kind of just like float in no man's land and went to the G League.
Right, he snuck into the G League.
Yeah, I was a believer at one point in time, but I'm sad to hear that he didn't work out in Memphis.
So we're in the thick of the first round, although it feels like the first round's kind of resolved itself. But I want to ask you, unrelated to the playoffs, I want to ask you about the Washington Wizards, which I'm sure are a hot topic in late April. I was happy. I was happy for Wizards fans. Also, as a Grizzlies fan, I felt like somewhat a kinship because you guys finally, Ernie Grunfeld got fired, and then after that, I was also telling Grizzlies fans like, I know I don't think Chris Wallace will ever get fired. I don't know what he could possibly do to get fired. But both of us lost these GMs for our franchises. So you you still wear your Wizards fandom proudly, right? You don't try to be you don't pretend like, oh no guys, I'm a writer.
It's a losing battle. I've written too many crazy things about the Wizards over the last 10 years that at this point I just have to kind of own it, It is funny, though. We both have been emancipated, and the Chris Wallace, Grunfeld, the parallel is interesting because I think in each case they have both been around so long that it would take, there are crazy mistakes that they've made that I think a lot of people just forget at this point because they've been piled atop so many other mistakes. And,
right.
It's one of those things where it still hasn't really sunk in yet that the Wizards are going a new direction, probably in part because the Wizards haven't actually hired anyone new. But it does feel nice. I think at some point I will be able to look back at this like 15-year period of Grunfeld, of the Grunfeld regime and have a little bit more perspective on it. But right now, it's funny, like the end of this season got so dark for me as a Wizards fan that like my emotions have just sort of calcified and I'm kind of like, I just don't even care. I don't know, like wake me up when something good happens for this team for like somewhere in the distant future.
I like how you said there's so many mistakes that people don't even remember a lot of them. I try to always bring up that when the failed Grizzlies Brooks trade happened the wrong Brooks, Marshawn Dillon Brooks.
Yep.
It wasn't brought up enough to my taste. Chris Wallace has failed a trade before. Like they traded OJ Mayo to the Indiana Pacers on the trade deadline, however many years ago that was, but they didn't get the facts correct to the league office. It was a trade for OJ Mayo and Josh McRoberts and the Indiana first round pick that ended up being Kawhi Leonard. That all happened.
Oh my God.
So like this happened before that Chris Wallace failed to do a trade that was like reported. Like it was leaked. Like OJ Mayo is going to the Pacers. And then it was like, nope, the league office did not get the facts before whatever it was, 3 p.m. Eastern. And so it failed. So that's a forgotten thing.
I have a vague memory of that.
Yeah.
But
no one ever talks about it. What's a great Grunfeld that we don't remember?
Oh, man, the Grunfeld stuff, I would say if you go back to really the Randy Foye, Mike Miller trade was so insane at the time where they traded, I believe it was the 5th pick for those two guys. And like, that's the type of thing that I have had to kind of like black out of my mind and just try to like move on from. But there have been a lot of little, like the Andre Blatch extension where they had no reason to give him that money and gave him I think $45 million. They had to amnesty it like within 2 years. It was just a lot of decisions like that where I don't know who they were negotiating against, and yet somehow the Wizards came out giving these guys like incredible deals. Even Dwight Howard, by the way, who just picked up his player option for next season. Like, you didn't have to give Dwight Howard a player option. But it's good to know that he's going to be in my life for the next 12 months. So that's the type of stuff where like, it's so maddening. And like, I think I don't know if you guys felt this way with with Chris Wallace down there, but like, they weren't always like catastrophic decisions, but it was more just like quietly irrational decision making that would be, so people would look at me and be like, why are you so upset about like Dwight Howard having a player option? And it would be like, you know what, man, it's been 15 years of this and I just can't do it anymore. So I'm glad to begin a new chapter at some point here.
Well, so now that the Wizards are starting a new chapter, if you were placed in charge, if you had to try to repair what's going on with the Wizards, and as you said, your feelings have calcified, you had a very dark end of the season with the John Wall injury where everyone, I feel like all of NBA Twitter was already like jumping on the, hey guys, John Wall actually secretly has the worst contract in the NBA, and then he got hurt. And so now that you're in this dark spot, if you were given permission or given the authority to make some changes or make some moves to be in charge of the Wizards, what would you do? What would be your first thing to try to get this franchise going in the right direction?
Well, I think a lot of it, and I'm sure this is true in Memphis as well, a lot of it comes down to the lottery, because if they are able to luck out and get Zion, that obviously changes. And the Wizards have a 10% chance, so that's not zero. And so that's the one thing that I would wait and see on. I think beyond that, I don't know how much sense Bradley Beal makes long-term in DC because of how good he is and how limited everywhere else on the roster is beginning to look. So I would definitely have a conversation with Beal to see where his head's at. And I would imagine that he's going to end up making All-NBA and be eligible for the Supermax contract this summer, which is only going to make that conversation more complicated. But I don't think that the Wizards intend to pay 2 Supermax deals for a team that's probably not going to be any higher than 10th place next year, in which case, like, Beal may be ready to move on. In general, my strategy, though, would be to sort of look at these next 2 to 3 years as an opportunity to kind of churn through as many projects as possible to try to find a couple guys who can kind of blossom. And similar to what like Philly was doing during the process. The problem is you're not going to be able to utilize the draft as much as the Sixers were able to, because other teams are smarter now and are going to be more aggressive about keeping their assets. And then the lottery odds are different, but you can still try to take on bad contracts. I would try to trade for other teams' bad contracts in addition, or in exchange for like an extra asset here and there, and use these next 3 years to just kind of like replenish everything and start doing things the right way. And it's one of those things that I think just organizationally, that would be my priority, is to just say, all right, this is going to be a long haul. We're not going to turn this ship around in one off season, and approach it that way.
Well, how low of an asset would you accept for a bad contract? Say the Hornets want to give you Nick Batum, or the Timberwolves want to give you Andrew Wiggins. Like, trading Beal for one of those guys would be kind of horrifying. Like, what's the minimum return that you would say? All right, guys, we need to bottom out. Bradley Beal,
well,
here, have fun somewhere else.
Yeah, that's a tricky situation. I think if you're moving Beal, you need to get at least one, probably two, like lottery level assets. And with Beal, like, I think like if the Dallas Mavericks landed in the top five, you could probably go to them and say, we'll give you Beal, give us your pick this year, your pick in a couple years. And like, they would probably think hard about doing that deal. You could say the same if the Knicks end up at 4 instead of 1, the Knicks would be incentivized to maybe think about Beal. And so they would have options if they wanted to go that route. But that's the type of deal that I would do for Beal, where like, you're not trading him unless you're getting back some like elite level prospects. Like if Beal to the Lakers were a thing, I would want Brandon Ingram in return. And I think that's sort of reasonable. And the market would be there for that kind of deal for Bradley Beal. The salary stuff is a little different, where that's one where like, you take on a mid first round pick or a late first round pick if you can find it. I'm not saying take Andrew Wiggins for a couple second rounders, but it's one of those things that I think there are certain teams that are just kind of stuck and don't have many options. I would put the Grizzlies in the same category potentially, where like, look at it as a kind of a 2 or 3 year process.
Well, just walk with me here. What if my Grizzlies get the second or third pick? I mean, would the second pick in a Chandler Parsons expiring contract? How close are we? What more do we need to add in to get a Brad Beal?
Boy.
That Chandler Parsons is expiring, baby.
I think maybe we would need a little bit more than the second pick and Parsons.
I got a Dylan Brooks still on the team.
We could still make it work. I would think hard about. I would think about it. I would want more from Memphis' side, and I would also try very, very hard to throw John Wall in the deal and get John Wall and Bradley Beal to Memphis. And then I think that would leave Memphis in a weird spot, because you guys would have to turn around and try to trade Conley. But yeah, it would be that's the type of deal that I think isn't as crazy as it sounds at first glance for the Wizards, in large part because you have to think realistically about how likely it is that Beal is going to come through this next contract and say, yep, I'm ready to re-up and spend the second half of my prime with this team, which may or may not really be equipped to go contend for at that point in his career. And so that's why, like, getting out in front of that decision would probably be healthy for everybody.
Yeah, I can't. People ask me, and we've talked about, like, how would I fix the Grizzlies? And I'm in a similar, I don't really know. There's too many options. Like, there's, even if the Grizzlies have a 6% chance at signing Williamson, and it's like, well, if they get that, I still don't know what you do, because Mike Conley doesn't really want to be here, and like, you can't trade him for much, and they're going to be bad, and I don't know. Yeah, I guess I let the passing of time save us, which is the maybe just an existential crisis of my own.
Well, and I would also say with the Wizards, for instance, I think a big step for this team and this organization will be having somebody who's willing to think really hard about all the options. And so like what I'm rooting for is not necessarily a Bradley Beal trade. It's not necessarily like the process or whatever. But like you want people who are willing to think rigorously about the best course of action. And I think that didn't really exist over the last few years in DC and probably didn't in Memphis either.
Yeah.
And I think that alone will be a step in the right direction where it's like, okay, so let's be very level-headed about what we have, where we're trying to go, and how to get there. And once you start having that conversation, there are a bunch of different options that emerge. And the key is going to be having people in place who are willing to kind of like think outside the box a little bit. But there are no easy solutions for our broken franchise. There's no question about that. The one thing that you guys have going for you is that like Jaren Jackson Jr. is young enough to where you have a couple years here to think about how you want to build around him. And he's great. I mean, like when he was healthy, he was my favorite rookie this year. And I think like that alone is a real reason for hope going forward, which the Wizards are not quite there. That we don't have that like cornerstone of hope at this point.
Thomas Bryant. I mean,
yeah, it's Thomas Bryant, Troy Brown, Saturansky. Like, look, we're grasping at straws here.
Yeah, Saturansky's the guy. I'm like, if the Grizzlies could get him, but even knowing like we don't need any more players who are reluctant to shoot. Like the Grizzlies, every player is reluctant to shoot.
Yeah.
Let's last thing. Let's turn a little bit to the playoffs for anyone who's still listening past the Grizzlies and Wizards talk. I'm curious what your opinion is of a couple of these young shooting guards who aren't having the greatest postseason, and how it colors, I guess, your overall opinion of them. Donovan Mitchell, who I drank the Kool-Aid on fully last year. Like I was like, this guy's amazing. This guy might be the next Dwayne Wade. Like I love him. And then D'Angelo Russell on the Nets, a guy who I'm like, I think this guy might be super overrated. Like he's had a great second half of the season, but now I'm looking at this postseason and they're both like just kind of chucking, and they aren't scoring very efficiently. They're not getting assists. In D'Angelo Russell's case, he's not getting to the free throw line. So how have and again, it's just a small sample of this postseason. Like how has it affected how you feel about those guys and maybe like what their ceilings could be?
Yeah, it's tricky, man. I mean, sometimes I watch these games and I wonder, like, does anything matter beyond shooting? And particularly for guards like this, and it's also happening with Russell Westbrook and Damian Lillard, where like, you know, Lillard has a massive advantage because he can hit a jump shot and he can make the Thunder uncomfortable, and Westbrook can't really do that and can't get Enes Kanter out in space and punish them on the pick and roll. And when you look at Donovan Mitchell, I too drank the Kool-Aid. I continue to drink the Kool-Aid. I think he's really impressive. He played great over the final 4 or 5 months of this season. And he has all the intangibles you would want. The issue is that, like, I don't know if I trust him as a shooter in these kind of high leverage situations. And obviously we saw him miss that game tying 3 on Saturday night, but like even beyond that, he's been spraying the ball all over the court these first few games against the Rockets, and like it's a small sample size, but it's not surprising whatsoever. And D'Angelo Russell, I trust a little bit more as a shooter, and I think some of this is kind of an aberration from him. With him, I think the comparisons to Harden are actually pretty apt. The difference with Harden is that he's able to get to the line 10 times a game, and Russell is nowhere near that. And that's a skill that I don't know if you could teach necessarily. And the other thing with D'Angelo is like he's just a little casual with his passes, and he has this look to him where it's like he's kind of going through the motion sometimes, which Harden also has that look, and yet he doesn't turn the ball over nearly as much, and his passes are always like dead on, and it's part of what makes him so amazing is that he looks like he's going half speed, and he's still the best player on the floor. Whereas D'Angelo Russell looks like he's going half speed, and it shows, because then he's turning the ball over, he's not really getting the rim, and so I think I'm not giving up on either one of them, but this postseason has been a clear sign that like they still have a lot of room to grow. And I think one of the things that's interesting about where we are in the NBA media these days is like some of these guys blow up and are immediately anointed. Like I just said, Jaren Jackson Jr. is a future superstar. And like, right. I think that's true to an extent, but it's also like, D'Angelo Russell like needs to get a lot better before he's that guy that you can actually build a contender around. And the same is true with Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah, I think last season I was saying Donovan Mitchell, Hall of Fame lock. Like this guy's he's getting in.
Yeah. Well, look, he came up. He hit some big shots against the Thunder. He outplayed Russ in that series, and I really did. I don't know if I called him a Hall of Fame lock, but I was like, this guy. I thought he was like a better version of Dion Waiters, and now I think he's like a better version, or not a better version. I thought he was Dwayne Wade.
Yeah.
Is a crazy leap to make, but I really came away from that playoff run thinking that, and that may still be true, but it's going to be a few years.
Yeah, I don't know if that was a Freudian slip with Dion Waiters, because sometimes when I'm making jokes, I like to say Donovan Mitchell is Dion Waiters with the green light. So I'm just making jokes,
kind of.
But that's what it is. I feel like Dion Waiters is watching this playoffs and watching these guys and being like, my God, if I was given 22 shots a game, the things I could do.
Well, and that's another thing that I think about with D'Angelo Russell too, is it's like, there are a number of guys around the NBA who, if they were given the opportunities that D'Angelo Russell has been given in Brooklyn, could put up similar numbers. I mean, you got a lot of guys around the league who can score, and you watch the Nets play offense, and it's like a lot of what they do is just run those point guards into the lane and let them pull up threes, and that's kind of it. Like that's their set. And so I really don't know what to make of where D'Angelo Russell's going. It is kind of crazy though that like coming away from all of this, some team is going to pay him a max deal. Maybe it's Brooklyn, maybe it's someone else, but like that's going to be a big, crazy bet this summer too, because I think he could go either way over the next few years.
Yeah, thankfully, neither your franchise nor my franchise can afford to pay him a max contract. Anyway,
true.
Hey, Andrew, thanks so much for your time. I'm going to give you, I need to email this to for your Open Floor podcast. I think the question about who would do better in Brooklyn, Devin Booker or D'Angelo Russell, I feel like that could get Ben worked up.
Oh,
who would put up the better stats?
Absolutely.
And maybe throw in Donovan Mitchell, maybe throw in, I don't know, CJ McCollum, who's having an awesome playoffs. Anyway, where can we see stuff coming from you next? What do you got coming out that we can look forward to?
Just follow along. I'll be tweeting stories for the rest of the playoffs at Andrew Sharp and the Open Floor podcast. The rollout gets a little screwy during the playoffs, but it's usually every Tuesday and Friday with me and Ben Golliver, and we're having fun. It's nice after the final month of the season nearly broke my brain and spirit as a basketball fan. It's nice to have games that actually matter again.
Right. Well, thank you, Andrew, again, and look forward to talking with you again soon sometime.
Yes, sir. Talk to you soon.
All right, thanks to Andrew. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at Andrew Sharp. You're looking for another NBA podcast. I mean, they're one of the big boys with Sports Illustrated, but theirs is really, really good. The Open Floor podcast. They have a great chemistry, and they don't take it too seriously. So if you like us, you probably would also like the Open Floor podcast. Remember, download that Draft app. Come find me on there. My username is Fast Break Breakfast. Follow me. I'll follow you back, and we can play Heads Up for a Buck. Who wants to play Heads Up for a Buck? I will do it infinity number of times. It's a lot of fun. Draft.com. Use our code FASTBREAK. Also, get bonus content at patreon.com/FastBreakBreakfast. That's the best way to support the show. That money goes directly to us. Patreon.com/FastBreakBreakfast. You can follow me on Twitter at FastBreakBreak. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram. All right, you guys are the best. Thanks for listening. And remember, breakfast is the most important thing.
Yeah, never apologize for being G&G. Fair break, man. You understand?
Buying tickets online for sports and concerts has never been easier thanks to SeatGeek. They've created an amazing app and website that makes ticket buying easier than it has ever been. They pull all the tickets available on other sites into one place so you never miss a deal, and more importantly, you aren't wasting time. You can even set alerts for upcoming events, and they'll let you know if ticket prices fall. Even better, every ticket on SeatGeek is ranked based on value, so you can immediately find underpriced seats. And before you buy, you can use SeatGeek's detailed maps to see the view from your seat. I've got the SeatGeek app on my phone, and I use it all the time. SeatGeek is always honest and upfront about the price. You get to see the full ticket price from start to finish, and they never surprise you with big fees at the checkout page. Now, here's the best part about SeatGeek for all of you out there listening to the Fast Break Breakfast. My listeners who make their first SeatGeek purchase get a $20 rebate. And to get it, all you have to do is download the free SeatGeek app, go to the settings tab and click add a promo code, then enter promo code FASTBREAK. SeatGeek will then send you $20 after you've made your first ticket purchase. It does not get any easier than that. So download the free SeatGeek app and enter promo code FASTBREAK today.